global affairs.
We go beyond the headlines and into the real stories shaping our world.
Why paying more than $100 million to have 1,000 Kenyan soldiers come to Haiti when we could use that money to train the police?
What you've done with your grief is actually to spread it and give it and turn it into the love.
This served Netanyahu because he didn't think Hamas would ever be a serious military threat.
Congo is a country with so much wealth. The people have been fighting to regain control.
From the corridors of power to the front lines of change, Borderline brings you in with analysis of the issues.
The U.S. has power over them. Most of them will steal money from Haiti and invest in the U.S.
So people who support Sonko and Jumai, over half of them don't have a voter's card.
Sounds like Nigeria.
Join Ireti Bakare-Yusuf on Borderlines as she engages with policymakers and thought leaders,
giving you perspectives and insights you won't find anywhere else.
Be part of the conversation. Join us live.
Your voice matters on Borderlines as we explore the complexities.
Every Friday at 4 p.m.
on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
Stay informed, stay engaged.
Step into the conversation.
And good afternoon, Lagos, Nigeria, wherever, diaspora, the US, Israel, Palestine. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you again today. My name is Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. This is Borderlines, the only show that takes you beyond borders. There's a lot happening, as you know. There's still a lot happening all over the world, in Palestine, in Congo, in the US. We have the president that keeps giving us content. Us journalists, actually, like this man is a great content provider. So very much going on, Ukraine, etc. However, right now, it's not often you hear from somebody who actually lives, who is still living and experiencing apartheid in this day and age. I'm talking 2025, right? In this digital world, in this world of AI and 21st century 25, right? It's not often you hear that. But my guest right now is not just a farmer. She's not just a designer. She's not just a mother. She's the founder of Little Olia for Babies and Handmade Palestine. She is a U.S. wife and mother living under apartheid today in Palestine. Her name is Morgan Cooper. Morgan, welcome.
Thank you very much.
How are you? Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, very excited to be here.
No, the excitement is all ours. It's like I said, you heard me say, it's not often we get to speak to. It's not often we get to hear from. It's not often the people in Nigeria who are our primary listeners get to hear from somebody who is actually living under apartheid today. Because, of course, on this show we've done a lot on what's going on in Palestine, on the history of Palestine and Israel, on the history of the Palestinian people, on the history of the land. But you've lived in Palestine for some 20 years plus. Let's start from the beginning. How did you get there, especially given that today is Valentine's Day? Was it love that took you there?
No. Yeah.
Tell us, how did you get there?
It was Valentine's Day. Because that's just a very American holiday to me, so we don't celebrate it here. So when I first came to Palestine, I was an incredibly ignorant American who was just traveling. I had finished my bachelor's degree in literature and couldn't get a job. So I decided I would go back to Europe where I had studied abroad. And with very little money in my pocket, basically enough to buy a plane ticket one way, I went there and I kind of worked, earned money, and moved on to the next place. And I traveled that way, just with no money and trying constantly to get little jobs. And I had a professor from university who said her son was teaching at a Catholic school in Ramallah of Palestine, and would I like to go and visit? And I thought, well, that's fine. I love traveling and it's somebody I know, so I'll have a place to stay for free. And I could probably get a job there teaching English or something, make some money and buy a plane ticket out of there. So I bought that plane ticket and I had to call back and say, did you say Pakistan or Palestine? Pakistan or Palestine? Because I literally had that little knowledge about that part of the world. And then it clicked that it was Palestine. And it was like, oh, I've seen Palestine in the back of the Bible in the maps. I've seen the word Palestine. Oh, you have me. Oh, I'm going to Israel was my first thought. And I mean, living here, coming here the first time was such a wake-up call. You cannot maintain that level of ignorance when you step foot in a place. It's just not possible. So I got to the Israeli airport, which is called Ben Gurion, which is the occupied Palestinian airport, Alid, that they stole in 1948. And when I entered that airport, the Border Patrol was so hostile. And for me as a white American, it was a really shocking experience because I'm normally, welcomed, and it's such an easy experience with that American passport. And that was probably the biggest wake-up call of my life, that kind of white privilege was not going to work here because I wasn't Jewish. And so the experience of entering was incredibly suspect. Like, she couldn't believe that I wanted to travel alone. Who's my friend? What's his name? Where is he? Where's his phone number? Why don't you have that on you? Who else do you know? Where are you going? And I later came to start thinking that I think they think that women, and maybe this is, there's historical precedent for this, are just sort of going to fall in love and marry some Palestinian and get kind of sucked into that side of the story, and they don't want that to happen. I mean, in my case, it did eventually happen, right? But I didn't come here for love. I just came here thinking, okay, it'll be a cultural experience. But I moved in with this Palestinian family on day one. And it was my first experience living with Muslims or being around Muslims. There's one Muslim family in my entire high school growing up. And I fell in love with them. So in a way, it is a love story. I fell in love, especially with the mother, who became a dear friend. And I kept coming back to visit that family and understand their lives. And it became really clear, again, as a tax-paying U.S. citizen, that my tax dollars were going to fund something insane and vicious and brutal and illegal against international law. And that for me was my second huge wake-up call in my life. And it really changed the trajectory of my life. I mean, I've been here more than 20 years.
Interesting. Out of everything you said, one of the things that I found interesting was how you said, this awakening for not only a white woman, a white American woman who had only heard of Palestine at the back of the Bible, not quite sure what it is. But this is also this thing about our lived experiences within the race and the society and the country that we grow up in. From the offset, how were you able to marry that awakening and then crossing over to another person's world, to another person's reality, and actually now having to see that, witness it, and it's becoming your reality? From the start, how were you able to marry those two together? I mean, people often talk about guilt, right? Did you have anything like that?
They talk about what?
Guilt.
Guilt, yeah. So my parents are pastors in the Salvation Army. They're officers in the Salvation Army. And before they were in the Salvation Army, they were missionaries, and I was raised doing mission work especially in Mexico. But beyond that, my parents were really just good Christians who believed that they should follow the teachings of Jesus in so far as social justice. So when you see something that is wrong, you are responsible to speak out or act out. And we weren't a very political family, but when my parents saw, they took in men out of prison and gave them a place to stay to get back on their feet when the halfway house was full. Or my mom would always pick up people who were walking with their groceries. America, especially American cities and large towns, are really car transportation, private transportation. And she would always just go out of her way whenever there was any kind of need. She ended up fostering a little girl from the church and eventually adopting her because she had a really terrible family situation. And so I was raised with this kind of call to social justice, but that wasn't politicized or radicalized. Okay. So when I came here, I had no expectations would become an activist or be changed in that way. But I did come out of a tradition of, once you see something wrong, you have a responsibility then to act. So for me, I think guilt is really passive. When you have guilt, you just kind of wallow in that feeling, or it can take the form of self-pity, and that doesn't do anything. There's no action when you're guilty, when you feel guilty. But there is a call to action when you feel responsible. And I think when your eyes are open, you have to be responsible. And one of the first things you said was, you don't have many opportunities to hear from people who are still living in apartheid. And the irony is that Palestinians by the thousands are on social media speaking, but people don't want to listen to Palestinian voices. And something I heard in the last program at the end was this comment about how Africa is so valued for the animals. We want to protect the elephants, but it's not the people that we care about. And I feel like that's also here. And maybe that's in many colonized places, the way that the colonial world sees it. Like the resources, including like the entertainment of animals or their safety. In Gaza, people were videoing animals and what the genocide was doing to the animals. But in a lot of cases, that got more sympathy and outrage from white audiences than people sharing their own lived experience of what they were going through while they were being ethnically cleansed. So I feel that once you see that and your eyes are open, you should be responsible. It is a call to action, a call to changing, to doing something. And that should invoke anger, not guilt.
Okay.
When you see injustice, anger should motivate you. Anger is an action for me. It's not a feeling.
Talk to us about apartheid. Of course, Nigeria, Africa, South Africa, we've been through the whole colonization thing. In actual fact, a lot of Nigerians do actually connect with what's going on in Palestine and have been quite educated about it. So, videos are shared, but nobody, as like I said earlier, has actually lived in apartheid. You are living in apartheid. Tell us how that shapes your life. I've seen some of your videos and how, certain things will happen. You were delayed for like 4 or 5 hours. You're like, you know what? That's just regular here. You had meetings that were set up and suddenly they couldn't make it. That's just regular here. And those are the kind of things that people cannot necessarily connect with or are not aware with. Again, a lived experience. Talk to us about how apartheid, firstly, what's it like living in apartheid? And then how it shapes your everyday navigation and experience.
Okay, so I feel like it's really difficult for people to envision or imagine the landscape physically of the Holy Land, because we have so much imagination, whether it's through the Bible or the Quran. We have so much imagination over what that landscape was like historically, but we don't actually know what that really looks like. So at Christmas time, for example, in an American church, you'll see like Bethlehem with all these palm trees, which is absurd. Like palm trees don't grow in Bethlehem. So for me, also, the landscape of apartheid is something that is so insane that it's hard for people to imagine it. And one of the things I tell people when they come to Occupied Palestine and we drive around and I'm showing them places is that maybe the best way to help you process this is to think about how this is just a real science fiction. Like it's science fiction made real. So that when you go, for example, on the drive from here to Bethlehem, it's 25 kilometers between us and Bethlehem. And that can take me 4 to 7 hours to not only get there, but it will also mean that literally there are parts of the road, there are moments in the road where the road divides. And I have to go to the left because we have to stay on Palestinian roads, because to the right is an Israeli-only settler road. So when I talk about how crazy this landscape is, the reason that occupation is illegal and against international law, I mean, despite all of the human rights violations that Israel is constantly enacting, is because no foreign military, while occupying another country, can move its civilians into that occupied space. So it is the colonization, the settler colonial aspect of the occupation that renders it first and most illegal under international law. So you have in the West Bank, which is, that was created in 1948, the West Bank. Before that, that's not. You have historic Palestine, and it was divided in 1948 envisioned by the British colonizers. So we have that in common. And then ratified by the United Nations, historic Palestine was split up into 3 different sections. What is called Israel today, where, these immigrants coming in were given 52% of the land. And then you have on the coast this tiny little strip called the Gaza Strip. And then you have the west side of the River Jordan, which is like a butterfly's wing, called the West Bank. So the West Bank is a relatively new construct. It's created by colonial powers. And in the West Bank, that is supposed to be for the state of Palestine, you have all of these illegal Israeli Jewish-only settlements. And then, of course, they need infrastructure because Israel sends their national buses out to pick up and drive through all of this. So that means that they took Palestinian roads largely, and they made them Israeli-only roads. And so you have moments, and this changes constantly. Occupation is like this really complicated matrix moving machine, and it's just constantly shifting, and you're not sure which rules are going to change today. Literally, which roads you're allowed to drive today. So literally your path to go to university or to visit an artisan, in my case, is different than it was yesterday. And you have no way of knowing that. And today it's totally dangerous and people are getting shot for going the wrong direction. But yesterday that was the way you were supposed to go, and it's never been announced. And it's constantly like that with everything, including applying for a visa or any of the rules of occupation. They just change and you have no idea what's going on. And you find that you're being punished for not knowing that or doing the wrong thing today, which was the law yesterday for you. So occupation and apartheid in particular, this separation where you are literally put on a different road or have no path, and you find yourself bumping through the olive groves trying to go around the road because it's now close to you. This is a very strange infrastructure that exists here, but it's also a really brilliantly engineered architecture that gives a right of way to the Jewish settlers who are coming onto the road. So, for example, this morning I was meant to go to Bethlehem to visit 5 different artisan groups. And I postponed that trip partly because my husband severely hurt his back, and partly because the woman I was with didn't go because the elite military has been invading Bethlehem pretty intensely several times over the last week. So I called one of my artisans and was like, hey, what do you feel about the situation? You think it's safe for us to come? And she said, this is just our new reality, and we just have been normalizing this. So yes, come. The Israeli military is doing incursions right now, and we'll just try to stay off of the roads if they come in, or you can stay at my house. But also it means that when I want to do that trip, I have to plan. Okay, what time should I leave to try to avoid traffic? Because there's only 2 ways to get in and out of Ramallah and go towards the road towards Bethlehem. Well, what I learned last time when I decided to leave with my kids, which I now take my small children, my 4-year-old always goes with me because it is unlikely I will make it back the same day. And when that happens, I want my child with me. So I now have to work with my 4-year-old constantly in the car and doing artisan visits with me, just purely because I don't feel safe knowing I can't get back to her, especially. I think my 8-year-old is okay, but my 4-year-old has to stay with me. So, okay, what time are we going to leave? We left the last time we went at 7 a.m. thinking we were going to miss traffic. It's a Friday, so Palestine is off and quiet. It's a Muslim majority country, so Friday morning is really quiet. We ended up in this huge traffic line of Palestinian cars, and I just couldn't understand it. It's Friday morning. There should be 0 traffic. We should be to Bethlehem in 45 minutes. I timed this perfectly. The taxi driver turns around and says, no, on this, it's called Jebba, on Jebba checkpoint, the Israeli now closes it to Palestinian traffic entering to the Israeli settler roads. There are moments when the road has to come together and then it splits again.
Yeah.
Where we could merge onto that road, where they've taken over the Palestinian road, they close that off to us and put a military checkpoint blocking us so that the settlers could get into work for their 8 a.m. start time.
Yeah.
Well, we had this crazy piled up line, and half the people in that line are going into work in Jerusalem, just like the settlers. The Palestinians going in are now going to be an hour or two late to work because they were made to wait for 2 hours while the settlers were given that right of way. That is the definition of apartheid.
Absolutely.
The separation of two different groups of people on the same land with rights given to one group and rights denied to the other group.
Yeah. As it was in South Africa. I have so many questions for you. We'll talk about your son, because there was something I saw on your handle about your son, but I'll keep that a little bit later. We know what's going on in the West Bank. There's literally a micro war, if you like, going on in the West Bank, where Israel is ethnic cleansing. It's not being, covered widely. Israel is getting away with it, and you live in the West Bank. Also, one of the things that I saw on your handle that really sort of captured my imagination, and I remember looking at the video, that particular scene twice over and over again, was when you did a video of the hills and you said, "My beautiful Palestine," and we could see the settler community on the hilltop and stuff like that. Talk to us about the land grabbing that we know is going on.
Yeah, my husband is always looking to buy land. I mean, it's like his dream is to own land. And I think that's a very Palestinian sentiment that for me, I don't really understand. I look at the land and I think, okay, it's amazing, and it's your history, it's your genealogy, and it's our children's right and responsibility to connect to that land. But it's so turbulent and it's so uncertain, and so many people have lost their land to Israeli theft and land grabs. I mean, huge, we're just talking about incredible amounts of land, and land is valuable here. I mean, in the Ramallah area, not even the city center, I mean, the outskirts where it's still agricultural, you can be paying $80,000 for a quarter acre. And that's like probably a low number from a year ago.
And are these stolen land? Are these originally Palestinian lands? And who is selling them? Is it the state, Israel,
these are
or the settlers?
No, I'm talking about in the Ramallah area, it's Palestinian-owned lands. But you have Palestinian-owned lands in other places where, I mean, every settlement basically is on stolen land, even if they were able to buy parts of it from different families. It's majority stolen land, and they expand like cancer. I mean, there's really no other analogy here. The Israeli settlements are always on hilltops 100% of the time. Okay.
Is that for security reasons or to just sort of power? Is that for both power and security?
Both, for sure. Yeah. Both. And also for resources, right? Water aquifers in the mountains are huge resources. Right. And there's two major aquifers that exist in the occupied part of Palestine that we call the West Bank. And there are huge illegal Israeli settlements on top of both of those major aquifers, and all of that water is Israeli property. Did you know that you cannot harvest your rainwater here because Israel says rainwater is the property of the state of Israel? That's insane. And they apply that to all occupied areas as well as their state. And that's how traditionally Palestinians have harvested water for summer agriculture and summer use for generations. I mean, it's an ancient tradition. So the land is incredibly valuable, especially because after the Oslo Accords in the 90s, when the Israelis divided the West Bank into areas A, area B, and area C. Area A is the 5 city centers, and those were given to the PA and said, okay, you have control here. Area B was like almost all of the villages, and the Israelis said, okay, you have civil control, but we'll have security control, meaning that the military actually goes in and is in charge of things, and no police presence is allowed from the PA. And then Area C is basically all of Palestinian agricultural land. And this is all fully under the Israeli military. So when we pay taxes on our land, when we register buying a piece of land, we are forced to go to the Israeli civil administration, which is all Israeli soldiers, and register or pay there to have land that is Palestinian land in Palestine. And the Area C, the agricultural area, is where they tend to claim security. I mean, it's such an easy wild card, right? To always just use, nobody can question it. And that's what the entire Jordan Valley is. I mean, that's like the most fertile land, and that's all under Israeli control. And every greenhouse there is an Israeli settler, and it's basically annexed. Indeed. And it's because it's so fertile. All of the agricultural land has just been stolen and taken by them. So,
you're a Christian, and your husband is Palestinian. Again, one of the things when people think of Palestine, they think, oh, Muslims, right? Also, I remember you did a post where you said, I think it was Archbishop Willoughby, right, from the UK, was coming to your church, and you wanted to have a conversation with him, correct? The last Archbishop that left from the that recently left the Church of England. Talk to us about the Christian community in Palestine. And of course, the sort of, aggression they experience. Is it any different to the Muslim community, or are they all pretty much, treated the same way?
Okay. So my husband is a Christian, but here again, something you said earlier, that it can be, being an American, where you're raised, what country you're raised in, what culture, what languages you're raised in, even. All of that informs your experiences and your politics and so many different things. What it means to me as a white evangelical American to be Christian is very different than what it means to my Palestinian Christian husband to be Christian. We have very different understandings of that. And it's become increasingly clear over the last few years as we become more involved with the church in order for our children to have roots in the Christian community here. Christians in Palestine really sort of identify as an ethnic minority. They were less than 1% of the population before October 7th. Since then, I don't know what the numbers are. I know that every Christian I know in Bethlehem, which is where most of the Christians that are left are at, every single one talks about immigrating out and leaving, because they say, what hope is there? What future is there? I work like a slave trying to save money to build my house, to get married, and then what? It's just gone like that. Or, the land around my father's house, it's just gone like that. Or so the people feel that the situation is very fragile, and many people do want to leave and give their children what they see as a better chance in another country. So that's been a Christian problem for a long time, immigrating out. And so yeah, it's a very small population that identifies, not necessarily, like for me being a Christian, it's about your faith. And you can stop being a Christian. You could become an agnostic or an atheist or convert. But basically, once you're born a Christian in Palestine, you're just always a Christian. It's your culture. It's what you were born into. Okay? Now, that all said, the Christian community is so small here that for Christmas, the Orthodox and Roman churches, and we kind of all relate to either an Orthodox church or a Roman church, even if we're Anglican or Quaker or Lutheran. So you celebrate, for example, if you're in that group, you would celebrate Christmas December 25th, sorry. So you would here, everybody will support on the Roman calendar. Everybody will celebrate on the Roman calendar. And for Easter, everybody comes together and there's like parades and we celebrate on the Orthodox calendar. And that's because the community is just so tiny that nobody would be there otherwise, right? The few people that are left here. I have never experienced, because I'm not Palestinian, I think, I've never experienced discrimination as a Christian. That's not my experience. I experience Palestine largely as an ajnabiya, as a foreigner, because I look like a foreigner. I sound like a foreigner when I speak Arabic. So the Israeli experience that I have, they interact with me as a foreigner, or they interact with our car of people knowing there's a foreigner in the car. So I feel like that lends a level of white privilege to my experience with them. It might be very minimal, but it's there.
Yeah.
That a Palestinian man is not going to have. His life is not going to have that same value. So they don't have a problem, zip tying him, blindfolding him, beating him up on the side of the road. They're not as likely to do that to me, of course.
Indeed.
So my experience is really filtered through that. That said, my husband has told me stories of the Israelis trying to use Christians and Muslims against each other. Many stories of that, actually. And that seems like a really basic colonial playbook, like take the people, divide and conquer. And hey, we're going to give all the Christians in line a permit today to enter Jerusalem. If you're Muslim, leave. If you're Christian, stay. What happened? Every Palestinian walked out. And it's something I tell my child all the time, that you are Palestinian first. So when kids on the street, say something because they see me and then immediately identify me as Christian, and they ask. And for some kids, it's the first time in their lives they've interacted with the Christian. And we had this experience a lot over the last year because my son became friends with some of the kids in the refugee camp down the street. And so a lot of them were asking, about being Christian or making it an issue. And I just kept saying to all the kids all the time, don't you have Palestinian blood? So does my son.
Exactly.
You guys you are all Palestinian. And who is it that we're fighting against? The Israelis. So you have two things in common. Let's focus on those.
Absolutely. Yeah. This brings me on to, I think it was your son, or was it your friend's son? They were going to be going out, or they were going to be going to school, and it was a case of, I'm keeping my son at home because boys are more endangered, if you like. They're more at risk. They're the ones, and it doesn't matter how old they are. Fact is, male children are literally more at risk, more likely to be imprisoned and disappear than female. Talk to us about that. I mean, as a mother of a son myself, I remember thinking this is something that goes through my head quite a bit. I always think, if I was in Palestine, do you have a power cut?
Do I have a car park?
Power cut, because I saw that.
No. It's just getting dark, so I plugged in the lamp.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So talk to us about that. You have a son. I think it was your friend had a son, and how difficult it must be. How your heart must kind of carry that burden.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's, especially since October 7th, but before also, it's something that you think about, but it's something that increasingly mothers are sharing that experience and talking about it and trying to lend support. Now, to be really clear, like geographically, the West Bank is so separated from Gaza and the experience. And even within the West Bank, when you talk about this micro war, I mean, it's full on.
Yeah.
The Israeli and PA war against the people of Jenin and Tulkarem.
And yes, of course.
I mean, the Israelis just really are ethnically cleansing Palestinians incredibly in those areas. And we in Ramallah are still in a bubble. We can really go on with life and choose to kind of normalize all of this and not experience that violence. It's not come yet. But something I have realized, so last year, from late October through the very beginning of February, I took my children and we went to live with friends in Malawi. And something that came out of that was so many amazing conversations with other mothers here in Palestine, talking about how traumatized children are. But that's also something that we have to normalize. And we ask our children to normalize, to be able to live through that. But there is so much trauma, not only to the physical experience. I mean, I truly cannot imagine what Palestinian mothers and fathers are experiencing in Jenin, Tulkarem, in all of Gaza. There is something that is so vicious in the ethnic cleansing that targets children specifically. And really the most terrifying thing over the last year has been for me seeing how the Israelis have targeted journalists, medics, aid workers, and doctors more than anyone else. I mean, they really have gone after them. And I think those are some of the most dangerous and heroic people and positions in the world.
Yeah.
But it's always been males. It doesn't mean they won't go after a female. There's a woman from our church was recently released as one of the prisoners. They will still go after females. There are women being imprisoned. They are being tortured. They are being raped. But men are so much more likely to be targeted. And it is our youth. And it was my friend who said she was terrified of her son joining other kids after school and playing soccer. And yet she knew that she had to just let him go and say, yeah, go have fun and try to, allow him to live a bit. Or her other son was playing in the street when literally one street away, the Israeli military drove past and shot a young boy and killed him. And his friends, we're talking about 10 years old, his friends had to pick up his lifeless body, and 5 of his friends tried to carry him out of that space. You have children trying to save other children. And it's something so amazing to me, as you said, that in 2025, we can not only have an apartheid settler colonial regime that is fully empowered and funded, but is committing the most recorded and televised genocide in the history of the world. And people just sitting back and saying, especially, I mean, this is a comment for white Americans, just sitting back and saying, hey, I want to go about my day and go shopping at Costco or the mall or whatever, and I just can't be bothered to care where all of our tax money is going while our own country goes down the drain. I mean, it's just insane. It's an insanity, especially that people are seeing images of children being attacked by the thousands.
Indeed. And this is also the other thing that I was going to ask you is, as an American, when you speak to people back home in America, in the States, I don't remember what part of America you said you came from, but when you speak to them, what do you say to them?
It's so stressful even talking right now. My back is really tense because it evokes all of your anger, right? When you stop normalizing it and you talk about the incredible injustice that Palestinians have gone through since before 1948. I mean, the British were unjust to the Palestinians and the Turks before them. I mean, this is occupier after occupier after occupier, and exploitation and genocide after exploitation and genocide, that it's very, it feels very pointless to have individual conversations in the States. I go usually once a year to visit my parents, and they are totally, on board and converted. They've both been here and seen what injustice the Palestinians people have experienced. So I don't have that many conversations. And I would say that when I do, for example, I went for Christmas, my first Christmas in 20 years with my family. And my son is very social. So he was taking every opportunity when it wasn't raining or snowing to ride his bicycle around and try to find friends. So one afternoon I found him down the street with this group of kids, and I get into conversation with the man, the father. And it actually is so often, this is the conversation with Americans. So where are you here from? Palestine? Oh, okay. Do you know where Palestine is? No, I no. You know Jesus? Yes. Okay, do you know where Jesus was born? Yeah. Yeah, of course. Jerusalem. Literally, that's the result. Like, no, Bethlehem. He was born in Bethlehem. Well, yeah, we're from near Bethlehem, just near Jerusalem, north of Jerusalem. Or that's where my family, where we live. And it's confusion. And there's just incredible ignorance because it is a country where they have been invested in being a special ally to Israel since the inception of Israel. And the media, the mainstream media, has been part of spewing propaganda and supporting that special relationship. So most Americans, this has obviously changed a lot with the age of social media and since October 7th, but so many Americans are really like, I would say, soft Zionists, where you can easily convert them with reality and conversation. But what is the value of your energy one by one trying to change individuals who aren't really going to do anything? You need a mass awakening in that country for so many things. I mean, also the exploitation of African nations, the exploitation of so many of the so-called post-colonial countries. I mean, you need a mass awakening. They, as a country, are just asleep and dangerous.
It's interesting. Oh, let me call the lines. You can call the telephone lines on 0208. I can't find. I've suddenly forgot the line numbers. Anyway, you can call. I've gotten so into it. You can call us on 0201 2770993 0201 4657 You can send a WhatsApp message to 0809 597 5805. Your school friends, the friends you went to school with, are you able? No,
nobody speaks.
Really?
Nobody wants to be my friend on Facebook. Nobody wants to check in on me anymore. I think they are so just sick of being forced every blue moon through like a Facebook post or something to see that. Americans want to stick their head in the sand and just be focused on American politics, if you can even call it that, and domestic policy that affects them. Something that I have been saying for years, I used to be a Democrat, and years ago I just felt like there was no point in that, and I finally realized I am definitely not a Democrat, because this idea, for me, it is just so far from being radical enough. And I lost a lot of friends. I had professors who I was good friends with from university and grad school who really struggled with me. When the first time Trump was elected, I said, it serves y'all right. Because honestly, he is saying aloud what American policy already is doing. So take the mask off.
Indeed.
And let possibly be the beginning of the end of the American empire.
Yeah.
And it just killed people to have that said, because people still want to believe in their two-party system, and they want to believe that the Democrats are morally offering a compass and a future, and it's just not true. They are two charlatans, Harris and Trump, who have a very similar policy towards occupied Palestine. And that's the perspective I see American politics from. And people there want to say, yeah, but on abortion, yeah, but on,
Medicare. Yeah.
Health insurance, all of the issues that are important for them. And I say, it's time for you to stop thinking just about America, less as a country, as a nation. You want to pull back all of the foreign policy that is devastating the rest of the world and exploiting the rest of the world, then you have no business only knowing about and caring about American policy. And that's been the American trajectory for so long. The people themselves don't care. There's this joke. What do you call somebody who speaks 3 languages? Trilingual, 2 languages, bilingual, 1 language, American.
Okay, I'm going to go to the call. At that point, the lines are going crazy. Oh, I just missed it. You can all call back. I will be picking up your calls. Do we have any WhatsApp messages? Can you please check the WhatsApp? Hello?
Calling from Isolo.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, say that again, please.
This is Romeo calling from Isolo.
Yes, Romeo, go ahead.
Yeah.
Remember,
So my
1
question for
minute, please. Short, sharp.
Just quickly is that in a world where of AI, where the truth is uncomfortable, and let me say truth is a coloring book, how do you wake up people who rather stay asleep or just don't want to be bothered?
Okay, thank you. I'm going to actually, I should have said to you, Morgan, at the beginning, grab a piece of paper. What he said was, and a pen, if you anywhere near, what he said was, in a world of AI, how do you wake up people who insist on being asleep or something to that effect? So let me just answer another one. Hello. Okay. Hello.
Yeah, good evening, Yogi.
Good evening.
You have Emmanuel on the line speaking to you.
Go ahead, Emmanuel, very quickly, please.
Your guest has stayed in West Bank for some time. And he might, I mean, she might have get some news featuring in from Gaza. In our opinion, does he think that the Palestinians still want to remain in the land, or at a point they have become weary and say that maybe they should migrate out of the land?
Okay, got it. I got your question.
For their life being saved.
Thank you. That was Emmanuel, and then I'll answer one more call. His question was, you're probably hearing news from Gaza. In your opinion, do you think Palestinians are ready to leave Gaza due to being weary, tired, etc., or will they be staying? I'll answer the third one, and then you can respond. Hello? 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 Hello?
Ireti, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What's your name? Where are you calling from, please?
Okay, this is Ugochukwu calling you from Akaribo Road in Shagam.
Okay, go ahead, Ugochukwu.
Yeah, my question is, since the Israelites, they knew
Israelis. Yeah, go on.
Israeli, okay. They know that Jesus Christ is from Bethlehem, and Bethlehem is in Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they segregating Palestine from Israel? Why are they doing so when they know that Jesus Christ is from Bethlehem?
Okay. So that one was, since the Israelis know that Jesus is from Bethlehem, why are they separating Palestine from Bethlehem, I think is what he said. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes. This is the speed fire round because the lines are going and everybody's got questions for you. So if you can answer those three as quickly, well, I'll give you 2 minutes. Go on.
Okay. I'm going to start with the last one. I don't think that Israelis care where Jesus is from because Jesus is not part of the Jewish tradition and of, what is important to Israel. What is important to Israel is a Jewish nation on this land and that they get all of the land. It is simply about settler colonialism. And I think that African countries can appreciate that without a further explanation. Okay, That's it. They don't care that I'm Christian. They don't care, where Jesus is from. In fact, they have buses stay in Little Bethlehem in an Israeli settlement, and they just bus them in and out so that they can't spend any money on the Palestinian economy or interact with Palestinians. Are Palestinians ready to leave the land because they are exhausted? So my Instagram feed is full of Palestinian voices from Gaza. All I can say to everyone is that these voices are readily available on Instagram. So follow and listen to Palestinian voices. And what I hear them saying is that they will never leave their land. There is a moment when a mother may feel, or a father, and it's generally a parent, that they have to leave or do something for the safety of their children. People have left. There should be no judgment of anyone in any situation of violence choosing to leave. But what I hear, by and large, from Palestinian voices is that they will rebuild, that you can never take the land from Palestinians because they are the land. They have been the stewards of this land for thousands of years. And my phone closed where I was typing the questions, the last one.
Oh, dear.
World of AI. I have to be honest with you all.
How do you wake? I think what he said is, how do you wake people who insist on being asleep?
Yeah, I have to be. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, because people are watching, and you see this. There are Palestinian videos that have millions of views. People are seeing what's happening, and they do nothing about it. And even people are burnt out and don't want to see it anymore, and they just scroll past. We have a huge crisis right now in humanity. people have lost their humanity, and that is the only reason for what is happening. So I have no idea how to answer that question. How do you wake people up? If I knew that, we could end injustice.
Indeed. Right. You can call 0201 465 7190, 0209 597 5805. I have a question here for you on WhatsApp. I'm going to put it to you because I believe you will do justice to it rather than me answering it. The West Bank traditionally belongs to Israel. How can you say they are occupying their ancestral land? That's Tomi from Ikeja. Do you agree with that?
I'm not sure at what point the West Bank traditionally belongs to Israel. Israel is a state that was created in 1948, a state of immigrants who were coming in and were not welcome in any other part of this world. And so they were brought here, and the British created and the UN ratified the state of Israel. It is a state of settlers coming in. There's nothing that belonged to Israel.
Okay, right.
If he's trying to reference the Israelites from the Bible, that's something different. And that's what the state of Israel relies on. And that, my friends, is part of the Zionist myth.
Don't go away. I'll be right back after this quick break.
For that tasty meal when you like, oh. I mean, you won't cook food to impress, so.
Whether it's jollof or na stew, even for porridge or spaghetti, cook to impress with Pepe Terra.
Life's full of crazy moments that whisper, do you have the guts?
And when your body screams stop, but you need to go one more time, that's Dubai confidence.
Pitching a bold, out-of-the-box idea in a boardroom full of suits? That's Dubai confidence.
That nervous hand shooting up to answer a question no one else dares to tackle? That's Dubai confidence.
Reaching for that skyscraper high jump? You bet! That's Dubai confidence.
That Dubai confidence comes from wearing the Dubai antiperspirant and deodorant with 48 hours all-round protection. Dubai, own your grind. Available in stores near you.
Hello, Mrs. Martins.
Yes. Oh, Mrs. Johnson, how may I help you?
Junior's body temperature is high and he's complaining about headaches and body aches.
Not to worry. Get Bruston and suspension.
Okay, ma. I'll call you back.
Bruston and Suspension for Children is a sweet-tasting brand of ibuprofen which provides relief against toothache, pains, and fever in children after 30 minutes.
Hello, ma. Oh, Junior, stop that.
Is everything okay, Mrs. Johnson?
Yes, ma. Junior is fine now. In fact, Junior, sorry, ma. I'll call you back.
Brustin and Suspension for Children. Always take the product 10% doctor. A quality product from Rambags.
Mr. Teacher, please, what happens when children come to school? How is it that they leave home very neat and return looking so different?
Non-stop action, ma. All the learning and sports burn energy. So those sweat stains, torn uniforms, and dirty shoes, they show that your kid has been very active.
Now, wow.
Your kids need nourishing energy. Give them the new and improved Milo at breakfast. It has nutrients that support energy release to help them get the most out of their day. Milo, energy to go further.
Let's fall on the mountain, run. But this time, there is no fire. Are just running, okay? Get ready to make history. 1 decade after, we are still running stronger than even after this. Okay, forget to remember edition of Act Back 2025. You and it says 9,000 words, 2 kilometers, 10 kilometers. It's told don't believe all book. Adrenaline. If you don't want to miss out on this, okay? So I have questions. Go to www.c.map and need more at www.this.com to make this edition and less authoritative and it's at bank.
What is honest to you?
Above and beyond borders.
Beyond borders.
It's Borderline
with Ireti Bakare-Yusuf.
Welcome back to Borderlines, the only show that takes you beyond borders. My guest has been Morgan Cooper, and I don't know if you've listened to all the details that she's been talking about. This is a reality. It's not fiction. It's not from a story. It's not something from a film. It's not even from a documentary. It is their lived reality. And that is why it is always, always important not only to keep your ears open, but to listen and do your research. Like she said, check online. Morgan, let's talk about your husband. Let's talk about your husband. Let's talk about your husband. You said he's a Palestinian Christian. Talk to us about, and you said something, you said your Christianity, the way he connects with Christianity is different from the way you connect with Christianity. I'd like you to expatiate on that for us, please.
Yeah, I mean, really, for me, it's just a religious belief. It's in a box. It's a religious belief. It's believing that Jesus died for your sins and rose again, and you have eternal life through that belief, okay? There's this box. You can leave that belief. You can convert. You can decide you don't believe it. You can just walk away from it for a decade and come back to it. It is, for Palestinian Christians, it is their identity. You are born to it, and you're born to a genealogy of being a Christian. And my husband's not just a Christian, and my children, this is like so mind-blowing to me. My children are not just Palestinian Christians. They are all first Christians. That means that they are considered to be direct descendants of the disciples of Jesus Christ. So the irony that today we think of Palestine and we don't think that it's also a land of Christians. I mean, we say that Jerusalem is for the Abrahamic religions, but people have really made Palestine and the social justice movement, especially this was my experience in Malawi and in South Africa, it was really a lot of Muslims were coming behind and supporting, but the Christian community was not stepping up. And if you look in America, you have Christian Zionism, which is just the most flabbergasting. I'm gonna be at a loss for words for the first time tonight. Ideology, because how could anyone believe in any of the teachings of Jesus Christ and reconcile that with the racism of Zionism? Because that's all Zionism means. It means racism. It is a racist ideology that believes that Jews should have a homeland, even if it's through settler colonialism, and that they should ethnically cleanse all non-Jews from the land to be able to have that homeland. And that is just not possible that Jesus would ever get behind that. So it should be that people are able to remember that Palestine, where you have Nazareth, Jerusalem, Bethlehem, even here in Ramallah, we have ancient church, Byzantine church ruins. This is the land where he walked and where he lived. So even if you're a Christian or a Christian Zionist, I think people need to take a very serious look at what it means to be a Zionist and what it means to be a Christian, and that there's no possibility to be both Christian and Zionist. You have to be a humanist. You have to believe in human rights. Jesus believed in human rights. And that's the issue here. It's a human rights issue. It's a humanity issue here.
I'm going to be answering your calls now. Hello.
Good evening, Madam Ireti.
Good evening. What's your name and where are you calling from, please?
And good evening to your guest, Mrs. Morgan.
Yes.
My name is Mr. Peter, calling you from Yaba. Now, what I want to say is that everyone is aware that when you say the truth about the true situation in Palestine, or you criticize the Israelis will term you as being anti-Semitic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my question to your guest is, what has been her experience with the Israeli security, with the Israeli military, so to speak?
All right.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Right. I'll answer another call. Hello.
Can you repeat that first?
It was, hold on. It was, what has been your experience with the Israeli police or military? Hello.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, I'm wanting to speak to Morgan because she has unpacked a whole lot of information tonight.
Yes.
And a lot of it is so new to me. And so I'm just concerned about, number one, Morgan, how do you keep yourself focused on what you're trying to accomplish right there in Palestine? Do you feel that perhaps maybe coming back to the U.S. might help you further your activities?
Okay.
Because it's so challenging for me to wrap my hand around how she copes and maintains a mental, stability, remaining focused. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, I'll come back. That's about how you navigate your work, and we haven't talked about your work. That'll be an opportunity for us to talk about that. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead. Your name, please.
Okay,
sorry.
my name is Walter. I'm calling from Victoria Island.
Okay, Walter, go ahead.
Okay. I follow this program. I know nobody wants war in this country, but I think what has caused and has brought the war to this position is the continued...
I'm sorry, I don't know where you are, but there's a lot of background noise. A lot. A lot.
Is it better? It's the network. I don't know.
No. There's a lot of background noise. Yeah. Anyway, I'll allow you to answer those two. How do you keep yourself focused? And how do you feel about coming back to the USA and your mental stability? And also, what has been your experience with the Israeli police force, the IDF, or military?
How do I feel about going back to the U.S.? Like,
how do you do your work? Do you not feel like going back to the USA?
Yeah. I would never live in the United States. I felt that way since I was 19 years old and I studied abroad in Spain. I had this amazing opportunity and it opened my eyes. It made me fluent in another language so that I could experience life differently and other people and other cultures. But it also made me realize how accessible the rest of the world is. And I looked behind me at the United States and thought, man, I don't want to be in a place where people are so damaging to the rest of the world and not even aware of it. And something I mentioned earlier, like it's really difficult for me to interact with that. So I decided when I wanted to do graduate school to go to the University of Hawaii, because Hawaii is an occupied land that the Americans colonized and stole, and it was under a sovereign monarch with international treaties. So for me, I had a lot of alliance. I felt very allied to that, as I do to other social justice issues in other colonized places, like it was amazing to be in Malawi and South Africa as well. So I would never want to go back to live in the United States. And if I did move out of Palestine for some reason in my life, I tell my husband this all the time, I would be going back to Malawi. I was in love, absolutely in love with people and with what I was able to do while I was there. So never the United States. Trying to open my phone real quick. I would like to speak about the Israeli Defense Forces, which are not defending anything. They are the Israeli Occupation Forces, the IOF. And my experience of the military is that they are often 18, 19-year-olds who are very trigger happy. And I personally experienced them by going through checkpoints in a car, a taxi, a service, which is like a shared minibus where you're driving from place to place. They always have their guns pointed right at the car as you drive by. For me, that's, especially when my kids are in the car, really a daunting experience. Also, if you have to walk up, I remember years and years ago having to walk physically through Kalandia checkpoint when I was allowed to go to Jerusalem and I was allowed to access my embassy back in the day before I married a Palestinian. And also the same thing, the gun is right just trained on you as you're walking up towards them. It's a constant brutality, violence that Palestinians experience in their daily life. And as we already said, it's more likely to target a male. So there have been times where, I'm driving and on the side of the road, you have an Israeli military armored car and you have 5 of their soldiers out and they have one Palestinian guy blindfolded, zip tied, and they're just beating the shit, out of him. This is the reality. They can do anything they want and they know it and they have full U.S. backing even before Trump. It was just said with a smile and a little bit more refined. displacement. So the military is dangerous, it is terrifying, and if you are in places like Gaza or in Jenin, it means death. And that said, Palestinians still have to face those foreign occupiers constantly because they control everything. The borders, if you want to travel in and out, they control internally. There are more than 800, I believe actually that the number was 898.
Yeah.
Internal checkpoints controlling Palestinian roads. They have installed huge metal gates at the entrances of every Palestinian village, town, and city. So they are a constant experience for Palestinians. And all they mean is violence. And when people say to me, shalom, I always say, I'm sorry. That language is, the only time I hear it is with a soldier screaming Hebrew at you at a checkpoint. And I don't think that many Palestinians have a positive experience of Hebrew because it's through the violence of a soldier. It's a mother going to visit her abducted son who's being held hostage in an Israeli prison. And she hears the Hebrew being screamed at her as she's being told to strip her clothes off, trying to get access in to see her child, who's being tortured and held in solitary confinement. You see pictures of the prisoners coming out. So this is the Palestinian experience of the Israeli military. And in my case, it's very limited, mostly to when I'm traveling between cities.
Indeed. Let's talk about your work. You work a lot with the earth, with nature. You know, it's when somebody goes through your feed, your whole feed, how you navigate Palestine. And I think this caller asking, you know, about your mental stability is possibly because they don't know that you work with nature, you work with the earth. I saw you making za'atar the other day, and I'm like, that's literally one of my favorite herbs. Literally. Yeah. I didn't even know that you could make it. I buy it from here. I buy it with my crosser in Nigeria. So when I saw you making it with your friend, I was like, oh my God, I can attempt to make this. Not me. It'll probably be a mess. But so talk to us about your work.
So the work you're referring to is with Mashar Jadur, and that is actually a conservation area that has the lofty vision of becoming an arboretum. And it's on the outskirts of Ramallah, still on the land of Ramallah, and it's on ancestral land that would have generations ago belonged to my husband's kind of larger family, but which we actually put our entire life savings into buying. And that project has been fully and completely stalled over the last few years, largely because we relied on international volunteers, which Israel deports any travelers here the second they know they want to come into Palestinian areas, much less if they're volunteering. My husband runs that mostly. I go out with the kids on Fridays, and that's when you see me doing things with the earth, especially wildflower conservation is kind of my favorite part of it, but also tree planting. We do a lot of storytelling around traditional knowledge and especially agricultural and wildlife knowledge and conservation. Now, we wanted to try to fund that years back, and so we started an income generation project, which has today become quite large, and that's Handmade Palestine. So Handmade Palestine is actually a business that runs like a nonprofit because it donates the money to Mashar Jadur for tree planting and wildlife conservation. So my work is, yes, I touch the earth a lot regularly, and that definitely helps my mental health. As it does for anyone. But my larger work is working with artisans. I work with women artisans, hundreds of women artisans, but specifically 30 artisan groups that have hundreds of artisans kind of as part of them. And that is so fill your bucket full of greatness. There's one artisan group of people with special needs, and I love visiting them in Bethlehem because every time you go in, you just feel like, yes, this work is so important and supporting what they're doing is so important. But also it just gives people a totally different experience when they see the stories of the artisans and the craft making and the cultural heritage and the agricultural heritage, because Palestine and Palestinians are so much greater than the images of violence that they have been forced to participate in by being the victims of a genocide. An occupier, a colonizer, will always have the indigenous people as half of their story. But the indigenous people have a beautiful and long history and culture that has nothing to do with their colonizers, because they were there before those colonizers. And that's the storytelling that we try to do through Handmade Palestine, is sharing with people the beauty of Palestinian cultural heritage.
Indeed.
Through the art.
And you do it so well. You do it so well. I also saw, you can call, sorry. I saw that somebody was ringing. 0201 465. I know I got carried away talking to you. 7190. You can send a WhatsApp question to 0809 597 5805. Morgan is only with me for another 10 minutes or so. I've literally had to steal her time. Like, I am stealing her time now, because now she's here beyond the time she promised us. Thank you so much, Morgan. The lines are going.
My husband would be calling, but I silenced my phone. Where are you?
Girl talk. Hello. You need to come close to your phone. Yes, hello. Where are you calling from and what's your name, please?
Hello, Kiziki.
Right. Hello? You need to come close to your phone. Hello? Oh, dear. Right. Hello? Yes. Oh, you need to turn off your phone, please.
Yes.
You can turn off your radio. Yes, good evening. What's your name and where you calling from, please?
I'm Badamasi from Sulere.
Okay, go ahead, Pastor.
Yeah, my question is that the apartheid in Israel, is it for the Arab Israelis or Palestinians?
I don't understand. Sorry, say that again. Please explain. What do you mean by the apartheid?
The apartheid.
Oh, the apartheid. Right.
Apartheid.
Yes.
Apartheid.
Yes.
Apartheid.
Yes. Is it for
the Arab Israelis or Palestinians?
Oh, you mean the apartheid in Israel? Is it just for the Arabs or for the Palestinians?
For the Arab Israelis.
Right. Okay. I'll let Morgan answer that. Thank you, Pastor. Right, Morgan, you can write that down and I'll come to you. Hello. Okay. Hello. Right, you can call back. I don't know what's up with the line. Let me allow you to answer that. Okay, the lines are going already. Hello.
Yeah, Chief Miss Ireti, good evening, man.
Good evening, Chief Minister.
Good evening to our guest.
Yes,
good evening. One.
Yes, go ahead.
It's like United Nations is helpless in all. For some time now, I never hear about them anymore.
Right. So your question is, please, or was just that the statement?
No, United Nations. What are they doing about what is going on?
Okay.
I don't hear anything about them anymore.
Okay, thank you. All right. Well, you can answer those, I'm sure, probably in a minute. Oh, the lines are going now. Bear with me a second. Hello? I don't know what's wrong with your line. You need to come closer to your phone. Hello? Okay. So the United Nations, do you think they've become more or less impotent? I think is what Chief Minister is trying to say. We don't hear from them anymore. Although I'm not sure if that's necessarily true, but I'll leave you to in your opinion.
All right. So on the term Arab Israelis, I've never met any Palestinian who is a citizen of the state of Israel who appreciates having their Palestinian identity erased and being lumped into this really large term of Arab. Just like I can't imagine that. Actually, I don't need to draw an analogy. I think you guys will be able to understand that really easily. That Palestinians have a very specific national and ethnic identity, and Arab could mean that you're from Morocco, where you can't even understand the Arabic spoken between a Palestinian and a Moroccan, okay? So Palestinians who have Israeli citizenship are still Palestinians. Israel has done something very, very brilliant in breaking apart Palestinians from one another, including families from one another through the apartheid wall, for example, and giving different legal identities to Palestinians who are in the West Bank, who are in Jerusalem, who are citizens of Israel, or who are in Gaza, and done this whole divide and conquer thing. So Palestinians who are citizens of the state of Israel still identify as Palestinians. And they experience a totally different and really intense system of apartheid. And there are many books written about that as well. And there are many people on social media, Palestinians, who are talking about that experience. Although since October 7th, many of them have been arrested, and so people are increasingly afraid of speaking out and speaking truth to power, because you can be arrested indefinitely under administrative detention. And I don't know if people saw that an Israeli citizen who is a Palestinian man and a bookseller in Jerusalem was arrested last week for selling books.
Absolutely.
National books. So it's becoming increasingly dangerous for Palestinians to speak out within the power of the Israeli state in those lines. United Nations.
Okay.
International law. I don't know what I can possibly add to that. Yeah, impotent seems like the right word from where I sit. I've had people tell me, no, don't undermine international law further by, mocking it or criticizing. But has anyone in the world, can anyone pretend that they see the application of international law?
Okay.
Even when you have a country as bold as South Africa taking Israel to the International Criminal Court, what has happened? International Court of Justice. What has happened? That is the incredible failure right now. And you have Trump pulling out of the UN Human Rights Commission, right? Is that
Yes, correct.
I mean, because he sees it as invalid, doesn't want to give his stamp of approval to it. So the United States has pulled out of that. We aren't going to be part of that. Israel also, it doesn't care. It does not answer. The state of Israel does not answer to international law or to the God of the Christian Zionists. So in that case, the state of Israel believes, and they say it, and they publicly say it, that there is no red line. Yeah. And yet humans must have a red line.
Indeed. Let me answer. I have messages here, actually, before I go to the calls. And this is, you mentioned earlier about how people can't get their head around the fact that there are Christian Palestinians, right? And how this affects all of them. But here we have. Good evening, ma. How are you doing? This is my first time sending you a message on this topic about Palestine. If she, well, okay, she being Morgan, right? Said Morgan says there are Christians living in Palestine. Where are the Christians when the Muslim extremists are bombing and shelling Israel? Where are the Christians when the Israelis were kidnapped? Hold on. Let me just put one more there, and then I can see the look on your face of complete bewilderment. Please tell Morgan that Thomas and Gina love her. Oh, Thomas and Gina love you, and that she did an awesome job speaking truth today. We miss her. Best wishes from Abuja. P.S. My wife and I live above her in Ramallah. Oh, wow. There you go, Morgan. Did you know that? Did you know that? Yeah, I told you, we have people listening to this show from all over.
Those are very old friends of ours who are now living in Nigeria. Yes. Yeah, that's amazing. Incredible. Yeah, they lived in the upstairs.
Incredible. So let me give you 1 minute, because I've got to go. My next guest is online and the lines are still going. That's the first question, which was, yes, there are Christians. She said there are Christians living in Palestine, or Palestinian Christians. So where are they when the Muslims are attacking the Israelis? I'd like you to answer that in 30 seconds if you can.
I really don't know what I'm meant to say to that. What are they expecting me to say to that? I mean, it's not... One of the things that I know was wrong about my education in America was that I was taught that Palestine, the question of Palestine, is an intractable conflict, okay, two problematic words, and it was religious. So it's not a religious conflict. It is not about Muslims versus Jews and where are the Christians in that.
Yeah.
It is about an indigenous people, the Palestinians, and that included Palestinian Jews at one point in history. Exactly. It is about an indigenous people who has been colonized and occupied since 1945 by the Israelis in incredibly vicious, brutal ethnic cleansing over and over and actually constantly from that period forward against a settler colonial state. So we're not going to make this about religion because it is not a religious war that goes back 2,000 years. That is not the issue. The issue is land.
Thank you. Morgan, your passion, your love, your honesty, your truth, your fearlessness is beyond inspirational. It's literally elevating, and it gives meaning. Even your activism, it gives meaning to every single person who continue to advocate for good over bad, for good over evil, for the Christian in all of us and the Muslim in all of us. Because like you rightly said, the children of Abraham own that land. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I just want to encourage everybody, because there's so many amazing Palestinian voices that are accessible online, to listen to Palestinian indigenous voices.
God bless you. Love to your husband and the kids.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Have a fabulous weekend.
Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info.